SHMUPS are a very niche genre in 2020, but they're one of the most challenging and rewarding games out there. Quick caveat, we're not including bundled game packages a la Sikyo or SHMUP Collection, just this generation originals and modern ports to Switch, not including any Neo Geo or arcade classics this time round. Without further ado, I'm Slyelessar, this is Sunaru Gaming, and this is a top 10 SHMUPs on Switch. First up is Ikaruga. I did not include this one on the list as it's been ported to nearly every console under the sun over the last few years. However, I feel it'd be remiss of me not to bring it up. Great graphics with an interesting colour change mechanic, Ikaruga is a fairly tough beast that may be tough for newcomers to the genre. With that said, once you have mastered the mechanic, it really opens up the game. With bare bones options, you get straight into the action. Gunbird 2 is a classic game originally released on the Dreamcast. Gunbird 2 gives you a choice of several characters whose look and animations bring replayability back to the game. Another game where there are bare bones options, the action is the most important thing here. The game allows you to set the difficulty between 1 to 7, backgrounds are static, with the camera scrolling vertically up the screen. Opponents can be quite unforgiving on later levels and bosses can be quite frustrating. However, the basic story to the game makes you want to just push on through. Overall, the gameplay is tight and the anime look and the graphics are done really well, allowing Gunbird 2 to remain one of the most memorable shmups that continues to be ported from generation to generation. I also mention this as it is one of the cheapest options on the list, which give you massive bang for the buck. Next up on our list is Zero Gunner 2. This was also released on the Dreamcast and ported to Nintendo Switch. Zero Gunner 2 asks you to set your difficulty and then throws you straight into the action. You have a choice of 3 helicopters or choppers to those across the pond. The overall gameplay is probably the most dynamic on this list, as Zero Gunner 2 introduces a mechanic that allows you to adjust the direction you are facing with just a button, which can be reassigned in the options whenever you want. The mechanic means that all your opponents can come from any direction, and allows for some of the boss fights to move and weave around in different ways, such as a train. The graphics are very arcadey, and this makes the sprites really nice and chunky. The weapon upgrades feel like they're giving you a proper boost in power, and the sound effects are spot on for a shooter, beefy and to the point. Any shmup veterans will want to try the harder levels, as even normal or arcade difficulty on this game is fairly easy to play through without much of a challenge. The menu is basic and matter of fact, and that is exactly what you want for a shoot 'em up. The only horizontal shooter on this list, As Your Reflections, is arguably the nicest looking as well. Graphically, it presents itself as a colourful game with anime style looks and storyline. Don't worry, you can skip the story and jump straight into the levels. It's all about witches and magic with a hint of the gothic. The menu system for this game is laid out very nicely and simple and to the point. Story mode is likely where you will spend the first few hours, and it offers up a decent amount of stages and a range of different difficulties. You have a choice of 3 characters, starting out with 1 and having to unlock the others via story mode. A shrine maiden, a magician in a traditional European witch costume, and an ice fairy. This game gives you a good choice of style of shot. This little touch is very nice, and it allows you to play slightly differently each time. This game has a mechanic called Danmaku Rush, meaning you can zip through the bullets, absorbing them, and then crash into your opponents to cause damage. In fact, you need to do this in order to beat the bosses later on. Given these controls and the fact that the game is horizontal, it plays quite differently to everything else on this list. You will find yourself in the middle of the screen a lot, defending attacks from both sides. This game has a 2-player co-op option, opening up the game a bit more and adding a lot more action to the screen. Ultimately, this is one of the more unique shmups on the system, offering up good gameplay and an aesthetically great package. Danmaku Unlimited 3 is a game I did not care for when I first saw gameplay footage of it online. However, due to the amount of praise this game accumulates, I had to try it for myself, and what a game it is. It's a very modern bullet hell game, both in looks and feel. Aesthetically, the game uses a lot of neon blues and reds and everything in between. The bullets range from traditionally round to more unique shapes. The bullets and other sprites are much larger compared to most on this list, but feels normal when you're actually playing the game. The sound effects are good and the soundtrack is banging. Each stage is met with various metal tracks with very tight sounding guitars and drums, which suits the tight gameplay this shoot 'em up offers. Menus are minimal, but the game allows you to customise your primary and secondary weapons. You can unlock quite a few options for both, and this opens the game up a lot more than you'd initially expect. You can set lives from 1 to 5, but the game will not allow you to save scores if you use more or less than 2. Graphically, the game is great to look at. Unlike other shmups, there is no confusing items or getting any confusion of which bullets are yours and which are your enemies, which makes it accessible to beginners. Sprites are sharp and look good and lend themselves to the space fighter feel of the game. If you want great modern graphics with fair and tight gameplay as well as a fantastic metal soundtrack, then this game is for you. Raiden 5 Director's Cut. Out of all the games on this video, this game's roots stretch back the furthest. As such, you would expect nothing less than gameplay that has been honed throughout the years to produce something tight, fun and challenging. Raiden 5 DC ticks all of these boxes. Firstly, the menu system you are met with looks great and keeps it real. Jumping into story mode gives you a choice of new game or stage select. In new game, you're asked to select the difficulty and they've thrown in a practice function. You are met with a choice of 3 aircrafts, Azuma, Spirit of Dragon and Moulin Rouge. Once you have chosen your aircraft, you have to select which weapon you want to use, always a nice touch. Before I jump into gameplay specifics, I want to mention the border. The border is very cool indeed with all sorts of information on it, but there is a lot of talking in this game between the characters that happens on the side whilst you are playing. This can be cool for an observer, but quite annoying for the player. However, you can turn the voices down or off in the options, so it's all good. Gameplay is tight, everything is crisp from firing your weapons, manoeuvring your aircraft, and sound effects are ballsy and great when the bullets connect. Pressing Y will set off your cheer effect, strange name, but essentially it's just a mini bomb or laser. Pressing A sets off your main bomb to clear the screen of bullets and deal damage. Backgrounds in this game go from static to quite wildly moving, as if you were zipping across the sky in a real aircraft. This can take a bit of getting used to, and beginners may find this distracting at first. You get used to it after a while, but it may be something that stops someone from picking up the game. This game also supports 2-player, and the size of the play screen works well with this function. Out of all the games on this list, it is the most expensive, nowhere near AAA game release price. This was around mid £20 for me. It's a classic game with a modern look.
Caladrius Blaze.
Originally released as Caladrius on the Xbox 360, Caladrius Blaze has been ported to current generation consoles in this fine version. Menus are simple, and story mode allows you to play original mode, evolution mode and arcade mode. It basically sums up as the amount of missions that you play, shown at the bottom of the screen. You are then asked to set options for the story mode, and then you can jump into the character select screen. You can choose from 8 characters, all of which play slightly differently, meaning that the game has the second biggest roster on this list. Weapon types and avatars for each character make them play and feel differently from each other, which is always a plus, but gives you about 80% of the screen to play with, which is fantastic. 3D looking sprites move on a 2D plane, background graphics are nice and not distracting during gameplay. Sound effects are crisp and ballsy, adding to immersion. Character avatars interact with Japanese now and again just off of gameplay, which is not as distracting as it may sound. The gameplay is fun itself, with tight movement of sprites, nothing sluggish. Boss fights are memorable, with fantastic design and dynamic bullet patterns. This game also shines in 2-player co-op mode, as the large screen real estate really allows both players to make the most of the space on screen. Overall, it is a very well-rounded and fun game, good for beginners, friends, and a challenge for those that want to ramp up the difficulty. Jamestown Plus is the only game on this list with an English protagonist in the storyline. Set in 1619, this game is a steampunk sci-fi game that lets you play as various famous folk from history. Don't worry, drooling action junkies, the story is skippable. Out of all the games on this list, Jamestown Plus has the most unlockables. This ranges from different kinds of weapons, jetpacks, difficulty levels and challenges. Menus are easy to navigate and you can jump straight in. Stages are selected independently from each other, but early on you can unlock a mode that allows you to play level after level. Before entering a level, you select the difficulty. I must stress that there is no easy mode for this game. However, normal mode is not as difficult as it is in other games on this list. This is a vertical shooter that uses almost the entire wide screen. That's right, no tiny column in the middle of the screen to squint your eyes at, a bonus as far as I'm concerned. The graphics are 2D classic looking, but look at home on current gen consoles, compared to some of the more pixelated shmups found on the Nintendo store. Your enemies are all manner of creatures and monsters, and the backgrounds are nice and non-distracting. Sound effects are great and the music has a very classic feel to it, more like movie score than the ballsy, balls to the wall bullet hell type game soundtracks you were used to. It actually works really well. Bosses are tough but not unfair. Changing up your weapon choice at the start of a stage can go a long way to helping you with specific levels. Next to your main weapon, you have a secondary weapon that could be anything from a beam, homing rockets or even a sword with ghost. You must collect coins / gold as you go through the level, which builds up the bar at the top. When the bar is full, you press the A button to vaunt. This is basically a shield that lasts for a couple of seconds and also grants an added boost of power. This game has the most replayability and is a lot of fun. This shmup is a very popular cave arcade game that was originally from Japan in the late 90s. It is hands down one of the best shmups recently ported to the Nintendo Switch and PS4. Parade has a very anime look to it, and you can feel the homage to things like Akira and Ghost in the Shell. In fact, aesthetically, this is a beautiful looking 2D arcade game. The backgrounds are detailed and the sprites are animated well. The game boots up and asks you to select a different mode, Arcade or Arcade Plus, and then you're in. You load the game with credits, up to 9, and then you have a choice of 3 characters, all of which that have different colour weapons and a different kind of main shot. These character sprites are detailed well, and each have a few animations for shooting and manoeuvring. Each character also has their own voice recorded for the game. The Y button controls your main shot, which can be held down, and you can tap the B button as often as you want for a more focused column that spews out in the direction that you move in. The A button is used for a charging power attack that can absorb bullets, and then when is released, shoots several large beams across the screen. This allows gameplay to be very fluid, especially when compared to something like Gunbird 2 that stops the gameplay to do a bomb animation. The game does allow 2-player co-op, but the screen may get a little overcrowded. Overall, if you are after an arcade classic, then look no further than the port of Parade. Unfortunately, these are not available on the EU or US Nintendo stores, but you can buy a physical copy online. It's quite pricey, but worth it. It also holds its value if you're not keen on the game, but definitely very high up on the list. Before our final entry, here are some honourable mentions. The final entry on this list is Shikondo, a beautiful shmup with a fantastic art style and Korean-based mythology. This is evident in the menus, which are a basic function but look fantastic aesthetically. When you jump into the arcade mode, you select a difficulty and choose between the Grim Reaper or the girl. Just to add, I've played this game with 2 players and it plays just as well in single player as it does in co-op. Backgrounds are multi-layered with effects in the foreground, and the main background is split between the middle distance and the far background. Sprites of different kinds of monsters maneuver around on top of these and are animated very well. Bullets look sharp and are easy to see, with some of the best looking patterns I have seen in a shmup. Boss patterns are designed for the type of boss in mind to help differentiating the bosses from each other in terms of patterns. In terms of looks, the bosses look fantastic and the art style really shines through and makes the bosses look very different. You have a main shot button which is spread for the Grim Reaper and a column with homing bullets for the girl. Pressing the A button focuses this shot and allows you to move slower. Both have a bomb function, which the game shows as Soul Collect, which can give you a boost in attack, shown in white and gold for the shot for a short period of time. The borders on this game are tastefully done, and the play screen size is large enough to be comfortable when playing. The soundtrack is one of the best on this list, allowing transition from general stage to boss battle smoothly and effectively. Bosses attack you in 2 forms. The first one is tough, but then transitions into a second form along with the music to warn you that the patterns are about to get more difficult. This game is great for beginners or veterans of shmups and is fairly cheap on both Switch and PS4 and often goes on sale on the Nintendo store. This shmup is worth picking up as it offers a great overall package, and if you want to play through the entire game, it doesn't actually take too long. That's our list. Let us know your favourites below. Please like, share and subscribe, and we will see you again soon. I've been Slyelessar. Have a good one.